The only normal people are the ones you don't know very well. The greater the feeling of inferiority that has been experienced, the more powerful is the urge to conquest and the more violent the emotional agitation. It is easier to fight for one's principles than to live up to them. Exaggerated sensitiveness is an expression of the feeling of inferiority. We cannot be separated in interest or divided in purpose. We stand together until the end. To be human means to feel inferior. Meanings are not determined by situations. We determine ourselves by the meanings we ascribe to situations. A simple rule in dealing with those who are hard to get along with is to remember that this person is striving to assert his superiority, and you must deal with him from that point of view. No experience is a cause of success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, so-called trauma, but we make out of them just what suits our purposes. To all those who say they hate to cook, I say try it, if only for the sheer therapy it provides. It is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring. A lie would have no sense unless the truth were felt as dangerous. God, who is eternally complete, who directs the stars, who is the master of fates, who elevates man from his lowliness to himself, who speaks from the cosmos to every single human soul, is the most brilliant manifestation of the goal of perfection. Death is really a great blessing for humanity. Without it, there could be no real progress. People who lived forever would not only hamper and discourage the young, but they would themselves lack sufficient stimulus to be creative. Every individual acts and suffers in accordance with their deeds. War is organized murder and torture against our brothers. Trust only movement. Life happens at the level of events, not of words. Trust movement. There is no such thing as talent. There is pressure. There is a law that man should love his neighbor as himself. In a few hundred years it should be as natural to mankind as breathing or the upright gait, but if he does not learn it, he must perish. The science of the mind can only have for its proper goal the understanding of human nature by every human being, and through its use brings peace to every human soul. In the final analysis, the one quality that all successful people have is the ability to take on responsibility. The chief danger in life is that you may take too many precautions. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. Follow your heart, but take your brain with you. One needs something to believe in, something for which one can have wholehearted enthusiasm. Neurotics are commonly described as individuals who suffer from inferiority feelings because they do indeed suffer from such feelings and endeavor to compensate for them. The neurotic individual suffers from feelings of inadequacy stemming from physical deformity or social inferiority, and from there he is impelled to make overcompensations in his thinking, feelings, and behavior. The question of whether I think or whether I am worth anything can only be answered by the deeds in which this thinking and being are converted into action. Anyone who has lost something they thought was theirs forever finally comes to realize that nothing really belongs to them. The important thing is not what one is born with, but what use one makes of that equipment. A good scapegoat is nearly as welcome as a solution to the problem. The healthy man does not torture others. Generally, it is the tortured who turn into torturers. It is easier to live in a state of perpetuated self-deception and in a world which confronts one constantly with the necessity for decision. Our modern states are preparing for war without even knowing the future enemy. In the investigation of a neurotic style of life, we must always suspect an opponent and note who suffers most because of the patient's condition. We must interpret a bad temper as a sign of inferiority. The test of one's behavior pattern is their relationship to society, relationship to work, and relationship to sex. There is only one reason for an individual to sidestep to the useless side, the fear of a defeat on the useful side. It is of great importance to keep a certain flexibility, to retain the ability to admit that you were wrong yesterday when you have to decide something today. The difficulties of life are intended to make us better, not bitter. Seeing must not always lead to believing. The truth is often a terrible weapon of aggression. It is possible to lie and even to murder for the truth. Overcoming difficulties leads to courage, self-respect, and knowing yourself. The proper way to approach any task is to ask oneself, what kind of world would this be if everyone behaved this way? Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism. The hardest job facing kids today is to learn good manners without seeing any. My difficulties belong to me. Man knows much more than he understands. The individual is thus both the picture and the artist. What do we live for, if not to make life less difficult for each other? Social interest is the true criterion of human values. Society lives by faith and develops by science. When you feel neglected, think of the female salmon who lays 3 million eggs, but no one remembers her on Mother's Day. To be a human being means to possess a feeling of inferiority which constantly presses towards its own conquest. The best preparation for a future job is to do good work in the present job. All human failures are the result of a lack of social interest. Life happens in the heart of events, not in the words we remember. The only profitable lessons are those that teach us how to conduct our lives better now. Each of us regards himself as the center of all the world's affections and interests. One need not hope in order to undertake, nor succeed in order to persevere. Meaningful relationships with others are of the utmost importance to human happiness. We cannot say that the attitude of the neurotic individual towards his problems is an intelligent one. On the contrary, it is distinctly unintelligent. Nature has no use for organisms, variations, or groups that cannot reproduce abundantly. She has a passion for quantity as a prerequisite to the selection of quality. She likes large litters and a survival of the fittest in the best sense. The proper time to influence the character of a child is about 100 years before he is born. A child who always walks in at the front door and regularly sees a variety of objects will develop differently from a child who uses the back door and is familiar with the backyard only. The true individual is no unsocial crank. He merely has confidence in his own ideas and the courage to venture on his own account. Music could be defined as a system of proportions in the service of a spiritual impulse. The danger lies in refusing to face the fear and not daring to come to grips with it. If you are a warrior, welcome your enemy. Education is an admirable thing, but it is well to remember from time to time that nothing worth knowing can be taught. The task for a child is to construct an individuality, and what he will make of himself is unknown and unpredictable. In the dualism of death and life, there is a part that brightens every hour of life with more intense colors than the glories of external nature, and that is the imagination connected with the feelings of the sublime. Work and love, these are the basics. Without them, there is neurosis. My difficulties belong to me. They are useful precisely because I should not wish them upon my enemies, but know how to handle them. We all prepare for some purpose that we expect will come into reality in the future. Every individual represents a unity of personality, and the individual then fashions that unity. The individual is thus the artificer of their own personality. I am grateful for the idea that has used me. It is always possible to bind together a considerable number of people in love, so long as there are other people left over to receive the manifestations of their aggressiveness. We should not be astonished if in the cases where we see an inferiority feeling of such magnitude that the individual cannot act, we discover a superiority complex of such intensity that it poisons the individual's possibility of happiness and self-realization. The stronger the feeling of inferiority that has been experienced, the more constantly will a person strive for its further alleviation, guided by the fictitious finalism of the self-enhancing personality ideal. Neurosis is the suffering of a soul which has not discovered its meaning. No reference to the past can be made validly unless it serves the purpose of understanding the present more clearly. When a person cannot laugh at himself, it is time for others to laugh at him. The term happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. Children need encouragement like plants need water. The goal of every individual, often unknown to him, serves to direct his conduct. We must never neglect the patient's own interpretation of his symptoms. All failures, neurotics, psychotics, criminals, drunkards, problem children, suicides, perverts, and prostitutes are failures because they are lacking in social interest. It is the feeling of inferiority, inadequacy, and insecurity that determines the goal of an individual's existence. Tasks are not difficult. It is lack of love that makes them so. Man's main task in life is to give birth to himself, to become what he potentially is. Fate and the preparedness of the soul are one and the same thing.